Show me the panel. Oh. Are you showing me the panel?
All the kids that are on your screen.
I don't have them. I don't have anybody on my screen.
All right,
but
you need to change up at the top right corner. You can go to a grid view. There should be an option for view.
I have the gallery view. Is that the one? There we go.
Yep.
That's the one you meant, yes. And I see all the lovely faces, and I don't know any of them.
Great. Okay. Excellent. So let me get the live streaming up. I think we're up and running. So we are starting round 2 of the Colorado High School Mock Trial Competition. This is the regional competition in Boulder. Are each side ready to proceed?
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay. As I know you just completed a competition round previous to this, I'm just going to remind you that Colorado Bar Association may be able to use still pictures or video takes from this during the competition. There is no recording without agreement of the teams. If there's any issue regarding the rules, you need to take it up in accordance with the rules of the high school mock trial competition. There's no recesses allowed except for health emergencies. And at this time, I'm going to ask each side to introduce themselves, and we're going to go ahead and start with the prosecution, and that is Team Rizzo.
Good afternoon, Your Honor, members of the jury, and members of the opposing counsel. My name is Emily McDonald, and I will be performing the direct of Markowitz and the cross of Taylor Perkins.
Good afternoon, Your Honor, members of the jury, opposing counsel. My name is Kendrick Chen, and I will be delivering the opening statement, the direct examination of Kyle Kuzak, and the cross-examination of Blake Van Owen.
Good evening, Your Honor, members of the jury, and opposing counsel. My name is Quinn Burns, and I will be presenting the direct examination of Alex Cifuentes and the cross-examination of Avery Becker, as well as the closing statement.
Permission to introduce our witnesses, Your Honor?
Yes, please.
Good evening, Your Honor, members of the jury, opposing counsel. My name is Haley Weintraub, and I am Kyle Kuzak.
Good evening, Your Honor, members of the jury and opposing counsel. My name is Ashlyn Crane, and I'm Detective Markowitz.
Good evening, Your Honor, members of the jury and opposing counsel. My name is Kayla Crane, and I'm Alex Cifuentes.
Thank you. For the defense, and this is Team Wolf, I believe.
Yes, Your Honor. Good evening, Your Honor, members of the jury, opposing counsel. My name is Lydia Marquez, and I will be directing Avery Becker, crossing Alex Cifuentes, and delivering the preliminary matters.
Good evening, Your Honor, members of the jury and opposing counsel. My name is Brooke Getzoff, and today I will be directing Taylor Perkins, crossing Detective Markowitz, and delivering the closing statement.
Good evening, Your Honor, members of the jury, opposing counsel. My name is Hannah Burns, and I will be delivering the opening statement, the direct examination of Professor Blake Van Owen, and the cross-examination of Kyle Kuzak. Permission to introduce our witnesses?
Yes, please.
Good evening, Your Honor, members of the jury, opposing counsel. My name is Haley Bonowitz, and I will be portraying Taylor Perkins.
Good evening, Your Honor, members of the jury, opposing counsel. My name is Isabella Nelson, and I will be portraying Blake Van Owen.
Good evening, Your Honor, ladies and gentlemen of the jury and opposing counsel. My name is Jessica Bush, and I will be portraying Avery Becker.
All right, thank you, everyone. Just a couple of things kind of unique to doing the remote hearings. It is important that everybody stay seated throughout the course of the trial so that you're close to your microphones. Mr. Chin, Ms. Bonowitz, both of you were a little bit quiet. It was a little bit difficult to hear each of you, so make sure that you're speaking up and remaining close to your computer. when you're testifying or participating. At this time, I'm going to swear in the team members. If I could have all of the students, please raise your right hands. Team members, do you promise that the presentation you are about to give will faithfully and truthfully conform to the facts, rules of the mock trial competition? Just give me a head nod and affirmation. Witnesses, do you promise that the testimony you're about to give will faithfully and truthfully conform to your witnesses' statements, that you will not add material facts or opinions which are not contained in the case problem, and that you will follow the rules and procedure of the mock trial competition? Okay. And scoring panelists, finally, all the students can put down. Scoring panelists, if you could raise your right hands. Do you promise to adjudicate the mock trial competition as fairly and as objectively as possible in accordance with the facts, procedures, and rules of the mock trial competition?
Do.
All right. Great. Thank you. Okay. At this time, I'm going to ask individuals to go ahead and turn off. Everybody can turn off their cameras except for the individuals that will be participating. I'm going to now ask the prosecution, are you ready to proceed, and are there any preliminary matters? Oh, unmute. I still can't hear you. Let me see, Ms. McDonald.
Can you hear me now?
I can.
Sorry
And
about that.
let me just tell you, I probably say unmute about a half a dozen or a dozen times every day in court, so don't worry about it. I'm sure it'll happen again. But any preliminary matters?
Yes, Your Honor. The prosecution requests that all stipulated facts are admitted into evidence.
Any objection by the defense?
No, Your Honor.
We also ask that we can assume that jurors, opposing counsel, and you yourself have copies of the exhibits.
I do not, and I can't speak for the panelists.
We will be presenting the exhibits so you can see them on your screen as well.
Here's what I can say. For the purposes of the trial, assume that we will have copies of exhibits, whatever exhibits get admitted. Okay, but it would be helpful if you want to talk about the exhibit, you probably will need to do a screen share.
Yes, Your Honor. We ask that entering exhibits into evidence also publishes it to the jury.
It does.
We also ask that timekeepers will stay with their cameras on at all times.
I'm not going to do that. What I've done in the previous session, timekeepers can put up in the chat how much time is remaining kind of as you go. And then when you get down to 10 seconds to turn your camera on and to kind of count down with your hands from 10 down. But I find it distracting to have the timekeepers on all the time.
That works for us, Your Honor. We also ask that any remaining time be used for redirect.
I'm not sure what you're asking there. That for remaining time on your direct examination that you can use for redirect, or are you asking to be able to use it as part of your when defense is putting on their case?
We ask that any remaining time be used for reclose after the closing statement.
Oh, sure, I understand. So your rebuttal close, certainly.
Yes, Your Honor. No further preliminary matters.
All right, for the defense, any preliminary matters?
Yes, Your Honor, the defense has one more housekeeping matter to attend to. We'd like to draw the court's attention to Rule 7.4 of competition, which states that all witnesses shall have all case materials available and in their possession during their testimony, but may only refer to them when prompted by an examining attorney.
Any objection?
No, Your Honor.
Okay. So
No further.
That's all right.
No further preliminary matters, Your Honor.
All right. Prosecution, would you like to make an opening statement?
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay. You may proceed.
Forced off the team, forced in the house. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, on March 6, 2020, Mackenzie Brackman, an attorney and mock trial coach, was found dead in his home. Mr. Brackman was stabbed and bled to death. Who stabbed him? Someone who had the motive to force into his home. Perhaps a student who was forced off the team. Avery Becker. Ladies and gentlemen, the evidence will show that Avery Becker had an ongoing grudge against the late Mr. Brackman, to the point of planning a burglary. And before the murder, she texted Alex Cifuentes, another school student at the school, messages surrounding her plans for this break-in. All the evidence will point to Avery's anger from being forced off the team went into forcing themselves into Mr. Brackman's house, making them guilty of second-degree burglary. When Becker found out that Brackman was in the home, a struggle began between the two of them, and as a result, Mr. Brackman was stabbed and killed. Today, ladies and gentlemen, you'll hear the evidence. First, you'll hear from Detective Jordan Markowitz, the detective assigned to Mr. Brackman's death, who will testify to her investigation as well as cell phone data placing Becker near Brackman's house at the time of the murder. Then you'll hear from Kyle Kuzak, who reconstructed the crime scene and will testify to exactly how this crime occurred and the means by which Becker committed burglary and murder. Finally, you'll hear from Alex Cifuentes, who will testify to Avery Becker's motive for breaking into Mr. Brackman's house. The evidence will show that beyond a reasonable doubt, Avery Becker was the one who broke into Mr. Brackman's home committing second-degree burglary. A struggle began between the two of them, and in the process, Mr. Brackman died. That, ladies and gentlemen in the jury, is murder. And the evidence will show that the only reasonable conclusion based on all of this evidence, the only way to get justice for Mr. Brackman is to find Avery Becker guilty of burglary and murder. Thank you.
Thank you. Defense, opening statement.
You can't fit the wrong puzzle piece into the puzzle, no matter how hard you try. Good evening, Your Honor, ladies and gentlemen of the jury. Today, you will hear the story of the murder of Mackenzie Brackman, the mock trial coach at Colorado High School, found dead in the doorway of his own home, stabbed in the back by an unknown intruder. You can't fit the wrong puzzle piece into the puzzle, no matter how hard you try. The prosecution will try to tell you that the individual responsible for the murder of Mackenzie Brackman was one of his very own students, Miss Avery Becker. Miss Becker was a dedicated member of the mock trial team, and she's very talented, winning many awards at competitions. It is true that Miss Becker and Mr. Brackman had their occasional disagreements, which is why the prosecution alleges that Avery Becker broke into Mr. Brackman's home and killed him. However, as you will see today, the investigation performed by the prosecution was rushed and incomplete and failed to explore many important aspects of the case that just differed from their approach. Despite the lack of evidence, the prosecution decided on one suspect, a high school student with no motive and a clear alibi. In doing so, the prosecution tried to force the wrong puzzle piece into the puzzle without noticing the seemingly more correct pieces, such as one Blair Rollins, former Colorado High School student and the daughter of a man sentenced to prison after Mr. Brackman failed to prove his innocence. In proving our case today, we will call 3 witnesses to the stand. First, you will hear from Taylor Perkins, Avery Becker's best friend. As Miss Becker's best friend, Miss Perkins will tell you that although some days Miss Becker did slack off, she always came through and performed very well and was a very crucial member of the team. Most importantly, Miss Perkins will tell you that she was with Miss Becker on the day of the murder. Miss Perkins will tell you that Miss Becker had lost her phone the day before the murder, and that on the day of the murder, Miss Perkins and Miss Becker spent the entire day looking for it. And this will be corroborated by the cell phone tower data records. Next, you will hear from Professor Blake Van Owen. Professor Blake Van Owen conducted her own partial investigation alongside the investigations of Detective Markowitz and Kyle Kuzak. Professor Blake Van Owen will tell you that the investigations performed by Detective Markowitz and Kyle Kuzak were not soundproof, and that their examinations of the scuff marks, the manner of the stabbing, and the cell phone tower data records were not thorough and did not match the correct theory of investigation. Professor Blake Van Owen will also tell you that there is no physical evidence or DNA tying the defendant to
I lost your audio. So hold on. I don't think you did anything at your end. Oh, it looks like you're muted now.
Okay, can you hear me now, Your Honor?
I can. And just for future reference, if folks have difficulties hearing or something locks up, please jump in or wave your arms, whatever you need to do. So I apologize for the interruption, but proceed.
Where did I leave off, Your Honor?
I'm not sure.
Okay, I will start from talking about Avery Becker.
Okay.
Finally, you will hear from the defendant herself, Miss Avery Becker. Miss Becker will tell you in her own words about her complicated relationship with her coach, Mr. Brackman. Miss Becker will tell you that the last time she saw her phone was the day before the murder. Miss Becker will also tell you that the last time she saw her phone was at the Fry Shack, and that most of the mock trial students were there that day, including Alex Cifuentes, a friend of Blair Rollins. The prosecution holds the burden of proof in today's case, meaning that it is their job to prove to you that Avery Becker broke into Mackenzie Brackman's home and killed him, beyond a reasonable doubt. The prosecution is not able to meet this burden. There is no physical evidence or DNA tying Avery Becker, the defendant, to the scene of the crime, and the prosecution rushed to tie up loose ends without exhausting all other possibilities. Not only that, but the prosecution failed to investigate Blair Rollins, a suspect with much more of a motive, and one that was missing from school on the day of the murder. At the end of this trial, you will be asked to determine a verdict. We ask that you consider the lack of evidence tying the defendant to the crime and the rush at which the prosecution performed their investigation. We ask that you look at how difficult it was for the prosecution to put their puzzle together, and that you look at all of the pieces of this case, not just the ones that don't fit. Finally, we ask that you find Avery Becker not guilty. Thank you.
Thank you. Prosecution, your first witness, please.
Yes, the prosecution calls Detective Markowitz to the stand.
Ms. Markowitz, I just want to remind you that you're under oath.
Yes.
State your name and spell your last for the court.
Jordan Markowitz, Markowitz.
What is your profession?
I have been a detective for 15 years, and I've worked with the Denver Police Department for 7 years.
Have you had any extra training in your job?
Yes, I had specialized training in cell phone technology and forensic data recovery.
Can you explain what that is?
Yes, I learned how to obtain and analyze cell tower data and records and download them using forensic software.
How many cell phone records have you downloaded in total?
I've downloaded literally hundreds of cell phone information.
Your Honor, at this time, I tender Jordan Markowitz as an expert in the field of cell phone technology, forensic data recovery, and homicide investigation.
Any objection of Vordia?
No, Your Honor.
She shall be so admitted.
What case were you put on in March of 2020?
I was assigned to the case of Mackenzie Brown's death. He was a criminal defense lawyer.
Please describe the scene that you saw.
I saw a victim outside the door of the knife adjacent to the victim, and there was a pool of blood coming from his left shoulder due to a stab wound.
Did you find a knife near the victim?
Yes, we did.
How did you know who the victim was?
I had an ID that said Mackenzie Brackman.
Can you describe the knife that was found at the scene next to the body?
It had a silver handle, and there's blood over the entire knife.
During your investigation, are pictures taken of the scene to later help with your analysis?
Yes. Any crime scene investigator will need to later review that.
Permission to screen share what has been previously marked as Exhibit 1.
You may.
Alrighty. Do you recognize this picture?
Yes, I do recognize this picture.
Could you please go back or could you please reference Exhibit 1? Do you notice anything that was near the door during your investigation?
Yes, they had a Ring video doorbell, and the doorbell starts recording when someone walks near the door.
Did Brockman have any other security measures?
Yeah, he had 2 more cameras, one pointed at the gate's backyard and one pointed towards the back door.
I move to admit Exhibit 1 into evidence.
Any objection?
No, Your Honor.
Exhibit 1's admitted.
How did you access this video?
Through Brockman's Ring account, which we found on the internet.
I am now going to play what has been previously marked as Exhibit 10. After watching that video, can you please describe what you saw?
There was a person wearing a hoodie, gloves, and mask, and he was trying to enter through the front door, but then left through the side of the house.
Permission to admit what has been previously marked as Exhibit 10 into evidence.
Any objection?
No, Your Honor.
10 is admitted.
Do you have more evidence on Brockman? What else did you look at?
His phone and the rest of his house.
When you looked through his phone, what did you find?
That he was the coach of a mock trial team.
What school was that?
The Colorado High School mock trial team.
Do you at first suspect anyone on the mock trial team of committing this murder?
There's plenty of people who are angry at Brockman, including Avery Becker.
Detective Markowitz, I would now like to have you identify the defendant on this Zoom hearing today. Would you recognize the defendant from when you arrested him?
Yes, I would be able to.
Your Honor, I would ask that you have Mr. Avery Becker turn on his camera for this line of questioning.
Mr. Becker, if you could turn on your camera, please.
Detective, do you see the defendant Avery Becker here on this Zoom proceeding today?
Yes, he is the one who just turned on his camera.
Your Honor, let the record reflect that the detective has identified the defendant, Avery Becker.
Thank you, Ms. Becker. You can turn off your camera now.
Did you try to obtain Alex DeFuentes' text messages?
Yes, but Alex did not have his phone on him, so he sent us screenshots instead.
Did you try and obtain Becker's text messages?
But Becker's attorney said that they lost their phone on March 5th, the day before the murder.
So how did you obtain this information?
I received Becker's phone number from Becker's attorney, and I checked with the call provider that Becker is with to get accurate information of the whereabouts of the phone around the time of the murder.
Can you explain how you estimate the location of the phone?
Yeah, a phone will use the best tower available to connect to. So when it connects to the tower, you get a rough estimate of where the phone is. And since the phone was moving, we could follow the path of the phone.
When did the phone stop sending these signals to the towers?
At 13:20 hours on March 6, 2020. And that would mean it was either on airplane mode or turned off.
Permission to present what has been previously marked as Exhibit 15.
Okay.
Alrighty. Do you recognize this map?
Yes, it was the map that had, with its cell towers, had traces of Avery Becker's phone we used in our investigation.
Great. Can you describe the cell towers?
Yes, so they all have 120-degree angles, which when you move past it, it will send a signal to your phone and back to the tower, placing you in either one of the 3 quadrants.
Did you use this map in your investigation?
Yeah, we were able to use the information to track Becker's phone.
Great. Permission to admit Exhibit 15 into evidence.
Any objection?
No, Your Honor.
15 is admitted.
Permission to present what has been previously admitted as Exhibit 16.
Okay, go ahead.
Do you recognize this map?
It is the same map as the previous exhibit, but I drew the line of movement between the phone.
Great. And what was that path? And can you highlight it for me?
Yes, I can.
That's okay. Can you just describe what the path was of the phone?
Yeah, sorry, I'm unable to highlight it.
Awesome.
The first antenna at the top, 1227-3, up there, received a signal from Becker's phone because Becker got a text from Perkins at 12:47, and that antenna covers Becker's house. And then the text was received for Perkins at 12:55, and it was at the next antenna, which is 11911, and it got a call from Perkins at 13:05 in the same range, and then it followed by another call at 13:06 and a text at 13:07, and those were on the antenna that is the 11971 tower, and that tower was closest to Brockman's house.
Great. Permission to admit Exhibit 16 into evidence?
Any objection?
No, Your Honor.
16 is admitted.
Can you please highlight the fry shack for me?
The fry shack would be near the antenna on the right and not in the range of where the cell tower would pick up information from a phone.
Great. And Becker went to the fry shack to look for her phone?
She did.
So you were saying that on March 6, 2020, her phone was pinging to a cell tower next to Brackman's house around the time of the murder and not at the fry shack like she said?
Yes.
So in your expert opinion, it was Avery Becker who broke into Brackman's house?
Yes.
No further questions, Your Honor.
Cross-examination.
Yes, Your Honor. Good evening, Detective Markowitz.
Good evening.
Isn't it true that the first student you talked to was Alex Cifuentes for this case?
Yes, that is true.
And you didn't contact anyone else on the mock trial team, is that correct?
No, we were only looking for people that we thought were being involved.
So after talking to Alex Cifuentes, you didn't investigate any further on the case regarding talking to people, is that correct?
That would be correct.
Is it true you didn't even interview Avery Becker herself, is that correct?
No. Well, yes, you are correct.
So instead, you simply relied on testimony from one mock trial student that was connected to Mr. Brackman?
Yes, and our investigation into this case.
Okay, and did you compare Alex Cifuentes' story with any other students that were in contact with Mr. Brackman?
No, we did not.
Okay, and you never verified the accuracy on Alex Cifuentes' statements, is that correct?
No, we trusted his word.
Okay, moving to the evidence the student had for you. Alex Cifuentes had screenshots of a text exchange with Avery Becker, is that correct?
Yes.
And you scheduled this interview with Alex Cifuentes to namely discuss these text messages, is that correct?
Yes, we wanted to see information on the case.
But when Alex Cifuentes came down, they left their phone at home, didn't they?
Yes, their attorney said that they lost their phone.
Right, and because they left their phone at home, they emailed you screenshots, is that correct?
They lost their phone, so they emailed us screenshots of their text messages.
Great. Okay, and just to be clear, you didn't ask to meet again with Alex Cifuentes with the phone?
No, we found his trustworthy.
Okay, so you're telling me that you trusted a clear piece of evidence that shows Avery Becker as a prime suspect from just being emailed screenshots from a high school student?
And our investigation concluded that she did have reason to speculate.
So just to be clear, you never saw the physical text messages as they were on the phone?
No, we did not.
Okay. Moving on to what was in the text messages. In the text messages, Avery was disclosing a secret plan to break into Mr. Brackman's home. Is that correct?
Objection, facts not in evidence.
Response.
Sorry, I didn't hear the objection, Your Honor.
Could you state the objection, please?
Objection, facts not in evidence.
This question does not apply to this objection because this question is asking my witness if about the text messages, which they had to study for, since that is in their expertise.
And correct me if I'm wrong. Oh, the text messages have not been admitted, have they? I don't believe
They have not, Your Honor.
it has not been admitted yet. So I'm going to sustain the objection at this time.
Okay, shall I continue, Your Honor?
You can.
Okay, Detective Markowitz, did your investigation reveal that Taylor Perkins and Avery Becker were close friends?
Yes.
But the night of the murder, Avery never answered Taylor's calls or texts. Is that correct?
Objection, relevance.
Response.
Sorry, I did not hear the objection again.
The objection was relevance.
Your Honor, this question does not apply to that objection because my question is coming from what the witness has previously stated in their witness statement. And the question I asked previously was also had something to do with the question I just asked.
I'm going to overrule the objection. I think it is relevant that somebody's not answering the text messages after being testimony about the close friendship. So I'm going to allow the question.
Thank you, Your Honor. But Avery never answered Taylor's calls. Is that correct?
Yes, and the date, that is correct.
Okay, let the record reflect that I'm now going to enter Exhibit 16, which has already been entered as an exhibit. Can everybody see the exhibit?
Yes, thank you.
Okay. Since we see Blair Rollins' house on this exhibit on the map, did you ever consider Blair Rollins as a suspect?
Yes, we did.
But you didn't obtain any evidence on Blair Rollins, is that correct?
We did not look into her.
But you didn't even decide to open an investigation for Blair Rollins?
We didn't have her as our prime suspect.
Okay. And since you were previously acquainted with the late Mr. Brackman, you must be aware of Blair Rollins and Mr. Brackman's previous situation, is that correct?
Yes, that is correct.
But even with this information, you decided to not even look more into this situation?
No, we did not look into this.
Okay, and just to be clear on this, detective, your argument is that Avery Becker's phone was tracked near Mr. Brackman's home, is that correct?
That is correct.
And you never once thought that someone else could have brought Miss Becker's phone to that area?
Yes.
Just to be clear, you have thought that someone else's phone could have been brought into that area besides Miss Becker?
It could have been a possibility, but we did not think it was very likely.
Okay. And as an expert, you know for a fact that a phone can connect to a cell tower even if it has to or is far away. Is that correct?
That is correct.
So you're telling me that Avery's phone could have technically have connected to the cell tower by Mr. Brackman's home, even if she weren't near it?
She would have had to be in range, but yes.
Okay, Your Honor, no further questions at this time.
Thank you. Any redirect?
Yes, Your Honor. When you asked to talk to Avery Becker, was she available for comment?
No.
Why was she not available for comment?
I don't know.
Did she lawyer up during this time?
May you please repeat the question?
Did Avery Becker lawyer up when you asked to speak to her?
Yeah, she had a lawyer.
And then let's go to the text messages. Could you use these text messages in your investigation?
Yes, we did use the text messages in our investigation.
So that again, did you use the text messages in your investigation as they were screenshots?
No, we did not.
Can text messages with screenshots be photoshopped?
Yes, they could.
And therefore falsified?
Yes.
Did Becker already have grievances with Brackman?
Can you repeat that question?
Did Becker already have grievances with Brackman?
Yes.
But Brackman chose not to charge her with these crimes.
Yes.
No further questions, Your Honor?
Thank you. Detective Markowitz, you may be excused. Prosecution, call the next witness, please.
Your Honor, the prosecution calls Kyle Kuzak to the stand and at this time would ask for a time check for direct examination.
There is 13 minutes and 30 seconds remaining.
Okay.
Ms. Kuzak.
Good evening, Ms. Kuzak. Please state your full name and spell your last for the court.
My name is Kyle Kuzak, Kuzak.
And what is your occupation?
I'm a crime scene reconstruction investigator.
And how long have you held this occupation?
I've had this occupation for about 19 years.
And where do you work?
I've spent the last 3 of those years with the city of Denver.
And are you certified in the field of crime scene reconstruction?
I am certified.
By who?
I am certified by the Colorado Bureau of Investigation.
Just to give us a sense, what type of crime scenes have you investigated?
Honestly, I've investigated all types of crime scenes. This includes home invasions, burglaries, domestic violence, murder, etc.
Your Honor, pursuant to Rule 702, in light of Kyle Kuzak's experience, I would like to offer Kyle Kuzak as an expert in crime scene reconstruction.
Any objection or voir dire?
Brief voir dire, Your Honor.
Go ahead.
Good evening.
Oh, Ms. Burns, we can't hear you again. Hang on a second. Would you go ahead and try now? Why don't you go? There you go.
Would you like me to restate the question?
Actually, we didn't even hear the question, so yes.
Okay. Ms. Kuzak, you are a civilian employee of the police department, correct?
Yes, I am.
So you are not an actual police officer?
No, but I work with the city of Denver and the police department.
But you're not an actual detective either?
No, I'm an investigator.
Is it true that you've only spent 3 years with the Denver department then?
3 years with Denver, but 19 overall.
So this means you're relatively new at the job at the Denver department, though.
Not really. 3 years is still a long time, in my opinion.
Not as long as your previous engagements, though.
No, but long enough.
Ms. Kuzak, do you have any formal education in the areas of your expertise?
Yes, I'm board certified, and I've been in this field for a very long time.
At this time, Your Honor, I object to this witness being entered in as an expert in the field of crime scene reconstruction, but for the purposes of mock trial, I do understand that this expert will be regarded as an expert.
The court does find that there's been sufficient foundation laid to qualify the expert as an expert in crime scene reconstruction.
Ms. Kuzak, let's talk about crime scene reconstruction. How do you approach reconstructing a crime scene?
As with all of my CSR work, I approach it in 5 steps. This begins with recognition and documentation, collection of evidence, evaluation of evidence, hypothesis and testing, and finally, the reconstruction itself.
And did you apply this to the death of Mackenzie Brackman?
As with all of my other work, yes, it is vital to do so.
What materials did you use to complete this process?
I used all of the materials that were given to me, which were the police reports, the photographs from the scene, and the 4 Ring doorbell videos.
And after completing this 5-step process, what did you conclude?
I concluded that on the day of March 6th, the perpetrator approached the residence, tried opening the front door before realizing it was locked. They then approached the back gate.
And let's sidestep for a second. As far as you know, was there any fingerprints or DNA found at the scene?
No, but this is completely expected in a case like this. There was no fingerprints or DNA evidence.
And why is that expected?
In all 4 videos, the suspect is shown, or not the suspect, the perpetrator is shown wearing a mask and gloves.
And after the perpetrator proceeded to the backyard, in your expert opinion, what do you believe happened next?
After proceeding to the backyard, they opened the gate, which is captured by one of the cameras. They then approached the back door and enter the residence.
And what does that camera show?
That camera shows the perpetrator walking up to the back door, opening it and walking into it.
And was there any evidence gathered right inside the residence?
Yes, directly inside of the residence, there were scuff marks on the floor.
Was a picture taken of these scuff marks?
Yes, there was a picture taken.
Would you recognize these scuff marks if you saw them?
I would.
Your Honor, at this time, I would like to show what has been previously marked as Exhibit 18 to the court.
May.
Ms. Kuzak, can you see the exhibit?
Yes, I can.
And what does this exhibit show?
That exhibit shows the scuff marks found directly inside of the door on the kitchen floor.
Your Honor, at this time, I move for Exhibit 18 to be admitted into evidence.
Any objection?
No objections, Your Honor.
18 is admitted.
Ms. Kuzak, in your expert opinion, what do these scuff marks show?
These scuff marks indicate a struggle immediately inside of the door.
And was there any other evidence that supports a struggle in the kitchen?
Yes, upon entering the kitchen, you can see an open knife drawer and a knife block on the counter.
Would you recognize a photo of this knife block if you saw it?
I would, yes.
Your Honor, at this time, I ask to show what has been previously marked as Exhibit 8 to the court.
You may.
Ms. Kuzak, what is this?
That is a knife block found on Mr. Brackman's counter.
Your Honor, at this time, I move for Exhibit 8 to be admitted into evidence.
Any objection?
No objections, Your Honor.
Exhibit 8 is admitted.
Was there anything significant about the knife block?
There is one knife missing from the knife block.
And what type of knife fits that slot?
A large chef's knife fits that slot.
What other physical evidence have you used to come to your conclusions?
There was a series of blood droplets beginning at the kitchen table, leading to the larger pools of blood that were at the door, along with the body.
Were there any photos shown of this amount of blood?
There were photos taken. The larger pools of blood are shown in the pictures with the body in it.
Let's talk about how Mr. Brackman died. Was there anything you used to determine how Mr. Brackman died?
There was an autopsy report made on Mr. Brackman's death.
Did you review this autopsy report?
I did, yes.
What does this autopsy report establish?
The autopsy report establishes that there were no other defensive wounds except for the knife in the back. It went through his shoulder, partially lodging there.
So, in your expert opinion, based on all the physical evidence of the scene, what happened on the afternoon of March 6th, 2020?
On March 6th of 2020, a perpetrator approached the front door before realizing it was locked. They then went to the back gate, opening that before approaching the residence and opening the back door. When they entered the residence, the victim was waiting there for them. The victim had been warned by either the Ring security doorbell or by the victim or by the perpetrator entering the residence itself. So the victim had a knife. They engaged in a scuffle directly inside the kitchen. That scuffle led to the kitchen table. At some point during that scuffle, the perpetrator gained control of the knife. Mr. Brackman was stabbed near the kitchen table before proceeding to the front door. The victim fled the perpetrator fled and the victim bled out.
So, how would you summarize this crime?
It was a home invasion gone wrong.
Thank you. No further questions, Your Honor.
Cross-examination, please.
Your Honor. Good evening, Ms. Cusack. I would like to talk a little bit about your theory of how the murder occurred. So you came to the conclusion that during the afternoon of March 6th, 2020, the victim of the murder was alerted to the presence of the perpetrator by the Ring footage, and the perpetrator entered the residence through the back sliding door.
Yes, that is what I concluded.
You then conclude that the victim took the large chef knife as a defense weapon after searching in the knife drawer.
The knife either came from the knife drawer or from the knife block, but yes.
Then you conclude that the victim confronted the intruder and they struggled over the knife, correct?
Yes.
And finally, you conclude that the struggle moved to the kitchen. The intruder took hold of the knife and stabbed the victim in the upper back and shoulder area by reaching over the victim when in a bear hug.
That is my conclusion, yes.
Okay, and I'd like to examine this theory a little bit. So starting with the Ring footage. So you reviewed all 4 Ring videos in your investigation, correct?
I did, yes.
And you came to the conclusion that the victim must have been alerted to the perpetrator's presence from the alerts from this footage.
Yes, the Ring doorbell alerts, the Ring doorbell has an app and it alerts the presence of anyone approaching the cameras.
But as I have been informed of, the alerts of the Ring security cameras can be turned off on a phone. Is that correct?
Yes, they can be turned off.
Did you check the victim's phone to see if the alerts were on for him?
I did not know.
Oh, hold on, Ms. Burns. I'm not sure what happens here, but we can't hear you. So there you go. Just mute yourself and then unmute and see if that does it.
Okay, moving on to the knife and stabbing position. You state that one knife appeared to be missing from a knife block on the counter.
Yes, there was a knife missing.
And you believe that the alleged murder weapon was taken from this knife block?
It could have come from the knife block, yes.
Is it true that this alleged murder weapon did not actually match the rest of the knives in this knife block?
It does not, but the knife that could have been there could have easily been replaced by the murder weapon.
But because of them not matching, it is still possible that the knife was brought onto the scene?
It is not shown in any of the videos, but it may be possible. It also could have come from the knife drawer that was open.
Okay, now let's move on to the part of your report that talks about the struggle. So you state there being scuff marks on the kitchen floor near the back door, is that right?
Yes, there were scuff marks.
And you state that these scuff marks are evidence of a struggle, but...
Yep, hold on again, Ms. Burns, you're cut out. Let's go ahead and unmute. And just for the timekeepers, the time where we are having these technical difficulties and having with Ms. Burns, that should not count against the defense's time. Ms. Burns, are you able to unmute?
Yes. Can you hear me?
Yes, thank you.
Okay. As I was saying, is it possible for these scuff marks to have been from prior experiences in the house?
It is a possibility, yes.
And you have no definitive way of telling that?
I do not believe there is a definitive way to reveal that.
Now I'd like to talk about the evidence that you don't actually have. So is it true that there were photographs taken at the crime scene that displayed small drops of blood between the kitchen and the front door and blood cast off on the wall and ceiling near the front door?
Yes, there were photos taken of the blood.
And it's true that these photographs were partially corrupted and irretrievably lost after you reviewed them?
Yes, but long after I reviewed them, I had no trouble accessing them during my investigation.
But we still have no actual physical evidence of these blood droplets in cast off.
Unfortunately, no, they were corrupted.
And continuing on, as you stated, no fingerprints or DNA were recovered from the gate or back door of the house, correct?
Of course not. The perpetrator was wearing gloves and a mask.
And you didn't manage to find maybe any partial shoe prints outside the house?
I do not believe there were shoe prints, no.
So this tells me that is this telling you that there is no DNA or physical evidence that actually links the defendant to this crime?
There is not physically, but with my expertise, that was the best conclusion I was able to draw.
Okay, now I'd like to talk about a theory that makes more sense. Ms. Cusack, could the evidence that you gathered that show that the victim was not actually alerted to the perpetrator's presence, was therefore surprised and stabbed from behind with a knife brought on the scene?
If they were not alerted by the Ring doorbell videos, they would have been alerted by the perpetrator entering the residence. I do not believe there's any way they did not know of the perpetrator entering the residence.
Is it also possible for the victim to have been surprised?
Possibly, only if their alerts were turned off, but they still would have known that the person was there when they walked in.
No further questions, Your Honor.
All right. Any redirect?
Not at this time, Your Honor.
Okay. Ms. Cusack, you may be excused. Prosecution, call the next witness.
The prosecution calls Alex Fuentes to the stand. Good evening. Can you state your first and last name for the jury?
Alex Fuentes.
And what school did you go to?
I go to Colorado High School, also known as CHS.
What grade are you in?
I'm a senior.
And what grade were you in at the time of Mr. Brackman's death?
I was a junior, so 11th grade.
And who was Mr. Brackman?
Mr. Brackman was the mock trial coach at my high school.
What was your relationship to Mr. Brackman?
Well, I was on the mock trial team, so he was my coach.
And why did you decide to join the mock trial team?
Avery Becker, a student in my grade, convinced me to try it out while we were freshmen.
Who's Avery Becker?
Avery Becker is a senior at CHS, and yeah, they're a student in my class.
And how would you describe Avery's and you said Avery Becker was on the mock trial team with you?
Yes.
How would you describe your and Avery's relationship before Mr. Brackman's death?
We were basically best friends. We were super close.
And how was Avery's participation on the team?
It wasn't very good. Avery would show up late a lot, and they were generally unprepared.
And did Mr. Brackman respond to Avery's participation on the team?
He tried to be patient with Avery, but eventually he got fed up and demoted Avery from the A team to the B team.
And did Avery stay on the B team for long?
No, Avery somehow convinced Taylor Perkins, who was like Avery's second best friend, to quit the team, and that forced Mr. Brackman to bring both of them back to the A team.
And did the team have a response to this?
The team was really upset about Avery being let back onto the A team. They were even more upset after Avery won the Best Attorney Award and Best Closing Argument Award at the regional tournament.
What's your objection?
Speculation. She's testifying to how her teammates felt.
Response?
Alex Fuentes is in fact a part of the team, so I believe she can testify for how the team may feel.
I think she can testify as to how she feels. I do think it's speculation to testify as to how others may have felt. So
Okay.
I'll sustain the objection.
May I continue?
Yeah.
All right. And did Mr. Brackman have any reaction to Avery's awards?
Mr. Brackman tried to explain to Avery that there's a difference between good lawyering and good sportsmanship, and that what Avery had done would be considered malpractice in the real world.
And did Avery react to anything Mr. Brackman said?
Avery was super upset about what Mr. Brackman said and left practice angry.
And did Avery do anything after leaving practice?
Avery vandalized Mr. Brackman's car by writing Worst Attorney Award across the hood in permanent marker.
And how did Mr. Brackman react when he saw his car was vandalized?
Well, he kicked Avery off the team for good. He really could have pressed criminal charges, but he was just a really nice person that cared about his students, so he wouldn't have done that.
And did Avery's absence affect you or what you perceived the team felt?
Yes. Under mock trial rules, once you get far enough to the state competitions, you can't just substitute people. And so Avery being off the team meant that our team was going to have to forfeit.
And did you hear from Avery after that?
Avery texted me shortly after the vandalism incident and asked that I speak with Mr. Brackman on their behalf to try and let them back onto the team.
And in what form did Avery convey this to you?
Through text messages.
And did you reply to that text?
I did. I told Avery that I would ask Mr. Brackman to let them back on the team.
Your Honor, permission to show Exhibit 14 to the court?
Okay.
At this time, I now show you what has been marked as for identification as Exhibit number 14. Alex Fuentes, could you please identify this?
This is a screenshot of the text messages that Avery sent to me.
I move to admit Exhibit 14 into evidence.
Any objection?
Yes, Your Honor, I object to hearsay under Rule 802.
Response?
Your Honor, I'm just building a foundation with these texts.
Are you moving to admit these texts to argue that they stand for the matter asserted there?
Yes, Your Honor.
Based on that, the court does find that the statements are hearsay, and I'm going to sustain the objection.
Okay. May I proceed?
You may.
All right. Did Mr. Brackman allow Avery back on the team?
No, he wasn't interested in letting Avery back on.
And did you relay this information to Avery?
Yes, I texted Avery telling them that Mr. Brackman just wasn't going to back down.
And did Avery have a response to this?
Avery was very obviously upset.
What was your relationship like with Avery after she was kicked off the team?
Well, we were best friends and we were also teammates. We pushed each other to be even better, and our relationship stayed almost the same.
And did you see her after she was kicked off the team?
Yes, I saw Avery a little bit after at Fry Shack, which is a restaurant that mock trial students like to go to study. Avery thanked me for talking to Mr. Brackman, and she even said that I should have won the Best Attorney Award. And then while we were there, Avery also let me play.
Objection, hearsay.
Response.
It is not hearsay. Again, I'm just building foundation to see, to later go into the fact that Alex did run into Avery at the Fry Shack.
Because Avery's been charged as the defendant in this case, he's a party opponent and his statements are not hearsay. So the objection is overruled.
Thank you, Your Honor. May I request a time check?
Sure.
There is 1 minute and 25 seconds remaining.
Okay, thank you. Was there any police involvement regarding the murder and burglary of Mr. Brackman?
Yes, I was called by a police detective.
And were you interviewed by this detective?
I was.
And what did you tell the detective?
Well, Avery and I are best friends. I didn't want to rat them out, but I also wasn't going to lie to detective. So I told the detective about the text messages I received from Avery.
And excuse me. Moving on, did anything happen after you spoke with the detective?
I was also contacted by a defense private investigator.
And were you asked to do any more interviews?
I was.
And did you accept it?
No, I declined the interview. They accused me of faking the text messages with Avery, and they also accused me of stealing Avery's phone and giving it to a student named Blair Rollins, which wasn't true.
And do you know Blair Rollins?
Barely. We might have said hi to each other in the hallway, but we were not good friends.
No further questions, Your Honor.
Thank you. Cross-examination.
Yes, Your Honor. You felt that Avery's lack of preparation left the team with a lot of anxiety, right?
Yes, Avery would make things up on the spot and wasn't prepared.
And you felt that way even though she was good at making things up on the fly and improvising?
Making things up on the fly, which was what was the thing that made us stressed out because we never knew what to prepare for.
But she was good at it, right?
Yeah, she was great.
And you even asked Mr. Brackman why he put up with Avery, right?
I did.
On multiple different occasions?
Yes.
And you felt that Avery always played the victim and refused to work hard, correct?
I believe that Avery didn't feel like they had to work hard because they were good at what they did.
But you worked very hard to prepare for mock trial, right?
I took my role in mock trial very seriously.
So it irked you that Avery was able to succeed by winging it?
Sometimes I felt like I wish I could be like Avery because they were just so good at what they did.
But you felt that it was rightful when Mr. Brackman demoted Avery to B team?
I think it was better for the team and their mental health.
And you felt it was better for the team, even though after being put back on A team, she not only won best closing argument, but also best attorney?
Like I said, she was good at what she did, and people recognized that.
And even though you felt that she was good at what she did, when she was kicked off the team, you felt that the team was better off?
Yes.
And you were also excited to finally have a larger role?
Yes, with Avery being gone, I got a larger role, and obviously I was excited about it.
And so you told the detective about the text messages from Avery, right?
I did. I told the detective that I'd left my phone, and I offered to bring my phone to the detective, but they said I didn't have to and that screenshots would work, and so I just followed the detectives.
So since you forgot your phone, you'd never showed the police the actual text messages?
They told me I didn't have to.
And you sent in screenshots, right?
Yes, they said to send screenshots in.
But you don't have the phone with the text on it anymore?
I got a new phone around 3 months ago.
So it would be impossible to see the actual text messages, right?
Because I got a phone around 3 months ago, no.
But it would be impossible to see them as they were on the old phone?
All we have are screenshots.
Right. An investigator from the defense came to see you, right?
Yes.
And you told them that you didn't want to answer their questions?
They were accusing me of things that were wrong, and I didn't want my story to get twisted in any way.
But you told the defense that you wouldn't answer their questions, even though you're willing to speak to the prosecution side investigators?
I felt like I'd already told my story to people that would believe me, and I didn't want to speak to anyone else.
And you also believe that Avery killed Mr. Brackman, right?
I do.
But you weren't there when it happened.
No, I was not. Nobody was.
So you didn't actually witness it?
No.
All right, no further questions, Your Honor.
Thank you. Any redirect?
Not at this moment, Your Honor.
All right. Mr. Fuentes, you may be excused. Does the prosecution have any other witnesses? Is the prosecution resting?
Yes,
Your Honor.
Thank you. Defense, you may call your first witness, please.
Can we call Taylor Perkins up to the stand, please?
Ms. Perkins, you are still under oath. Defense or witness?
Thank you, Your Honor. Please introduce yourself to the jury.
Hi, my name is Taylor Perkins, Perkins.
What high school do you go to, Ms. Perkins?
I went to Colorado High School, but we called it CHS, and I'm a freshman at CU Boulder now.
Why are you here today?
I know the victim and the defendant for this case.
How do you know these people?
The defendant is my best friend, Avery, and the victim was my old mock trial coach.
Okay, now let's talk about Avery Becker. What was it like working with Avery Becker on a mock trial team?
It was so much fun. We got to hang out all the time and do something that we both really like to do.
Did you always get along and work together well?
Yes, we're the best of friends. She's like the Virgo to my Gemini. We're basically like sisters, and we got along all the time, but not everybody on the team did.
What do you mean by that?
I think that not everybody liked the way that she did her work or the way that she wasn't always.
Objection, speculation.
Response, the objection was speculation.
This question was not speculation because I am asking what she meant by what my witness previously responded in the previous question I asked.
Okay, can you repeat the question?
I asked, what do you mean by that? By going off of what my witness previously answered.
All right, I'm gonna, because I kind of got lost in the questions there, I'm gonna allow the witness to answer the question if she knows, and then I'll rule. So,
okay, thank you, Your Honor.
Ms. Perkins, if you know the answer to the question.
Could you repeat the question, please?
I can rephrase it as well. What do you mean by your answer when you said not everybody got along with Avery on the mock trial team?
Well, people were hourly upset with the fact that she wasn't always prepared, and they made it very clear that they didn't like that.
Okay. And what did you observe about the relationship between Avery Becker and Mr. Brackman?
Well, everybody knew and everybody could see that they definitely did not like each other. Avery didn't like how Mr. Brackman was always getting mad at her, and Mr. Brackman didn't like how Avery.
Objection, speculation.
Response.
This question does not apply to that objection because I asked in my question, what did you observe about the relationship? Which is just asking how she perceived the relationship.
Permission to respond.
I'm going to sustain the objection. I find that the witness is testifying as to what Avery believed. And so without more foundation there, I find that it is speculative.
Should I move on from the question, Your Honor?
It's your witness.
Okay, thank you. Would you consider Coach Brackman a good coach?
I mean, he was okay. He definitely wasn't the best, but I think he got us some places.
Would you consider Avery Becker a good teammate?
Definitely. I think Avery was the best lawyer on our team, and I think that we wouldn't have won anything without her.
Did Avery Becker and Mr. Brackman ever get into arguments?
Yes, I could always see that they were getting in arguments sometimes, but they didn't get into arguments that often. The only thing, there was an incident with a Sharpie in his Porsche.
Did Avery ever show anger towards Mr. Brackman?
I think she definitely got angry with him sometimes, but she couldn't really do anything about it because he was her superior.
Were any of Avery's actions surprising to you?
No, I think that anybody in her position would have done the same, and I would have done the same if I was in her position.
Okay, and talking about the Sharpie incident, did Avery tell you, her best friend, that she actually meant to write with Sharpie on Mr. Brackman's car?
No, she didn't tell me, and I think she would have, especially since we're so close.
How did Avery handle the fallout of the Sharpie incident?
I think Avery handled it pretty well. She could have gotten a little less mad, but I think she handled it like most people would.
Okay, let's talk about the day before the murder. What were you doing the day before the murder?
I was at the Fry Shack with Avery, and we went to the mall.
Did you see anybody else while you were at the Fry Shack?
Yeah, we saw the whole mock trial team. Everybody talked to us, like Alex Fuentes.
Who is Alex Fuentes?
Alex Fuentes is on the mock trial team, and she thought that she was best friends with Avery, but we all know that I was the real best friend.
Did you all get along well?
I wasn't really part of their relationship, but I could definitely see that they were always pushing each other to do better in mock trial. And
Objection, speculation.
I'm going to overrule. She's testifying as to what she observed.
Thank you, Your Honor. Sorry. Carry on.
And the fact that they were always trying to show each other up during practice.
Did you talk to Alex Cifuentes when you saw him?
Yes, he sat next to us and talked to us for a really long time.
What was your interaction like with each other?
It was really odd because Alex was definitely acting different than usual, and I think that she was very very remorseful to the fact that Avery was kicked off the team.
What did Avery do?
Avery kind of got upset, and I could tell because she stormed off to the bathroom and left her phone.
Was Alex still there when Avery left her phone?
Yes, Alex was still sitting next to me going on and on about how sorry he was.
And when was the next time you saw Avery's phone?
I never saw it again.
Okay, let's talk about the day of the murder when Mr. Brackman was tragically killed. What were you doing the day of the murder?
Me and Avery were looking for her lost phone that she had lost the day before.
Where did you guys look?
We looked through every single store at the mall, and we even looked at the Fry Shack.
Did you ever find it?
No, we never found her phone.
Do you think Avery Becker would ever have resorted to violence with Mr. Brackman?
No, we're so close. She tells me everything, and I know.
Objection, speculation.
Sustained.
Okay. Should I move on to the next question, Your Honor?
It's your witness. You can do what you want.
Okay. With everything that has been said, do you think Avery Becker killed Coach Brackman?
No, there's no way she could have.
Objection, this is a lay witness and can't give her opinion on this information.
Response.
This objection does not apply to my question because it is asking what my witness thinks on the situation.
I'm going to overrule the objection. The witness has testified. She's best friends with the defendant. I think she can kind of give her opinion as to whether or not she believes the defendant would have done something like this. So overruled.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Repeat the question.
Okay, with everything that has been said, do you think Avery Becker killed Mr. Brackman?
No, she couldn't have. We were together all day long.
Okay, Your Honor, no further questions at this time.
Cross-examination.
Yes, Your Honor. Good afternoon, or good evening, Ms. Perkins. You were friends with Avery?
Yes, we were best friends.
You did mock trial with her?
Yes, we did mock trial all 4 years of high school, and it was so much fun.
Brackman was the coach and was not very fond of Avery because she's always late to practice and unprepared.
I didn't hear a question.
Brackman was the coach and was not very fond of Avery because she was always late to practice and unprepared.
Yes. I mean, I don't know what he actually thought because I'm not him, but I know that he outwardly showed that he wasn't her biggest fan.
As Brackman was the coach who was extremely passionate about his high school mock trial team, it made sense that he was mad that Avery was always late and unprepared.
I mean, it kind of made sense, but I definitely think that Avery was really good at doing stuff on the fly, so I don't think she needed to be as prepared as everybody else.
After multiple repeats of not coming prepared, he got so mad as to demote Avery.
Yes, but I went and I decided to quit the team so that Avery could move up because I think she cared about it a lot more.
But you only did mock trial because Avery was doing it, correct?
Yeah, and that's why I decided to move down because she cared about it a lot. Like, I don't want to be a lawyer.
And that led to Avery being back on the 18th, correct?
Yes, it did.
Brackman continued to get mad at her wrongdoings?
Yes, he definitely got mad at her after that, and it made her frustrated.
Thank you. And after one particularly harsh day, Avery needed to leave practice.
What do you mean by that?
After one particularly bad day, Avery left practice.
Yes, because I think she got super frustrated and she didn't want to show that in front of everybody. I mean, I think she was probably embarrassed.
So she went out and vandalized Brackman's car?
Yes, but she's very apologetic about that, and she said sorry multiple times, and she said that she didn't even mean to do it. She meant to get an expo marker and just play a prank.
But no matter what kind of marker it was, she was not aware that the marker would come off the card.
Could you repeat the question?
No matter what kind of marker it was, she was not aware that the marker would come off the card.
If it was an expo marker, it would have come off, but as it was a Sharpie, it didn't.
But no matter what kind of marker it was still defacement of someone else's property.
Yes, but as an expo marker, it comes off easy, and it was a prank, so it would
But
have.
no matter what kind of marker it was still defacement of property. That is a crime.
Yes, sure.
Avery showed up at your house after another failed attempt to get back onto the mock trial team, correct?
Yes.
You both went to the Fry Shack.
Yes.
And then to the mall?
Say that again?
And then to the mall?
Yes, and we went shopping because Avery was kind of upset.
And as her phone was her third kidney, it was very unlikely that she would have lost it.
I think it's pretty likely. She was really upset, and I don't think that she would have, if she was, I was with her, so I could tell she was upset. And in that situation, I think that there was a possibility that it could have been lost.
But as you say that it is her third kidney, it is attached to her, and she is very unlikely to lose it, correct?
Well, I'm saying that that's an unusual situation where she's not upset, but in this situation, she was very upset, and I don't think she was thinking about that because she didn't want to really have contact with anybody else.
But she didn't realize that it was missing until the next day, March 6th, that you both went out to go find it, correct?
Yes, because she was very emotional that night because she had just been kicked off the team, and she was really frustrated with Alex, so it's very likely she didn't even think.
Thank you. You noticed that it wasn't with her. You noticed that she had lost her phone when you weren't with her.
Sorry, say that one more time.
You noticed that Avery lost the phone when you weren't with her, correct?
When I was or wasn't?
Wasn't.
I did not realize that she had lost her phone.
Is that your statement in court today?
Yes.
Just give me one moment. Sorry, just having technical difficulties. It's not letting me see. It was not your responsibility to keep track of the phone, correct?
No, it was not my responsibility as it was not my phone.
But you went out with her on the day of the murder to go search for the phone?
Yes, we're really good friends, and we really didn't have much to do at school, and I thought it would be I'm a good friend, so I wanted
Thank you. And you went searching for this phone at the Fry Shack?
Yes, we looked at the Fry Shack, and that's where we saw the rest of the mock trial team and saw that Mr. Brackman had never made it to practice.
So your whereabouts were unaccounted for all day when you were supposed to be at school?
Well, we saw the rest of the mock trial team at the Fry Shack at the end of the day.
The day of the murder?
Yes.
With a person who frequently had disagreements with the man found dead?
Disagreements, and it was in a club during school, so that's definitely not have anything to do with murdering somebody.
That Avery has committed a crime to Brackman's property previously, correct?
Yes, but it was definitely a crime.
No further questions, Your Honor. Thank you.
You redirect.
No, Your Honor.
Ms. Perkins, you may be excused. Thank you for your testimony. Defense can call the next witness.
Your Honor, the defense calls Professor Blake Van Owen to the stand. May I proceed?
You may. Let's just wait. There we go. Thank you, Mr. Chen. Ms. Van Owen, you're still under oath. Ms. Burns, you may proceed.
Can you please introduce yourself to the jury and spell your last name for the record?
Yes, my name is Professor Blake Van Owen, Vanowen.
And what do you currently do for a living?
Currently, I am a private investigator and a professor at CU Denver.
How did you become a professor?
Well, I got my master's in criminal justice from Ashford University, and that opened up a door for me to start teaching some classes at CU Denver in social justice and police practices, and I've been teaching there for about 5 years.
What did you do prior to becoming a professor?
I served at the Aurora Police Department.
And what areas do you consider yourself to be an expert in?
I consider myself an expert in all policing matters.
What makes you an expert in these areas?
Well, I've been certified in many areas, including general police practices, general police investigation tactics, crime scene reconstruction, cell tower analysis, and many more.
Your Honor, pursuant to Rule 702, I move to admit Professor Blake Van Owen as an expert in police practices, forensic evidence techniques, crime scene reconstruction, cell tower analysis, and general police investigation tactics.
Voir dire or objection?
Your Honor, may I voir dire?
You may.
Good evening, Professor Van Owen. Professor, you originally worked for the Aurora Police Department,
Yes, I did.
but after a particular incident, you left that department,
Yes, I did leave.
and then you became disillusioned with police work and went into private investigation.
Yes, that is true.
And you've only ever testified as a defense expert, never on the prosecution.
Although that is true, prosecution investigators do that prosecution work for free since they are paid by the taxpayers. And so I am just put on the defense side because I require a fee since this is my private job. And so defense is just where I'm needed most.
And do you claim to be an expert in cell tower analysis?
Yes, I do.
Yet you can't provide any specific training in this area of expertise.
Although I don't have any specific training, I use it in my everyday job almost every day, and I've been using it for years, and I've been certified in as an expert in it.
Your Honor, at this time, the prosecution has no objections to the qualifications of this witness as an expert.
Okay, remind me of the qualifications in which you're seeking to have her admitted as an expert.
It is police practices, forensic evidence techniques, crime scene reconstruction, cell tower analysis, and general police investigation tactics.
Okay, I'm going to admit her for all except for forensics and crime scene reconstruction. I did not hear any testimony or foundation as to those two qualifications.
Your Honor, may I lay some foundation for the qualifications of the expert in that area?
You may.
Your Honor, Professor Blake Van Owen has been accepted as a defense expert in the U.S. District Court for the Districts of Colorado and Kansas, Arizona, and in state courts in Colorado, Wyoming, Nebraska, and New Mexico, and therefore has used these tactics in this expertise countless times. And Rule 702 does state that an expert can be qualified as an expert through experience and training, not just through education.
Prosecution have any other record they'd like to make?
Not at this time, Your Honor.
I'll go ahead and admit her for forensics and crime scene reconstruction.
Professor Van Owen, I'd like to talk about the investigation. What evidence have you reviewed from this case?
I've reviewed the police reports as well as the crime scene reconstruction conducted by Kyle Kuzak and the evidence and cell tower analysis prepared by Detective Markowitz. And I've also done my own partial investigation on parts of the case that I believe were severely neglected.
And what are your thoughts regarding the investigation tactics of Detective Markowitz and Kyle Kuzak?
Well, I've been involved in more than one case with Markowitz, and so I understand how he conducts his investigation. And based on the fact that of my experience with him, as well as the fact that there was a lot of evidence that was overlooked, I believe that Markowitz planted the idea in Kuzak's head that Avery Becker was their only possible suspect. And so they made a conclusion before they even started their investigation.
Your Honor, permission to share my screen.
You can.
Give me 1 second. Professor Van Owen, I'm showing you what has been previously marked as Exhibit 6 and Exhibit 8. Without going into detail, can you briefly explain to me what Exhibit 6 is?
Yes, it is the murder weapon.
And is this a true and accurate representation of the murder weapon?
Yes, I used it throughout my investigation and relied on it to form my conclusion.
Your Honor, I move to admit Exhibit 6 into evidence.
Any objection?
Not at this time, Your Honor.
Exhibit 6 is admitted.
Now, before we move on, Professor Van Owen, what can you tell me about the differences between these two pictures?
Yes, as seen, the murder weapon is a different style of knife than shown in the knives in the knife block.
Okay, and based off of these pictures in your investigation, where do you believe that the murder weapon came from?
Because the actual murder weapon is a different style of knife than shown in the knife block, I believe that the knife was brought into the residence by the perpetrator.
And now let's move on to a knife and manner of the stabbing. So, how did, sorry.
Burns?
Okay, can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Yes, now we can.
Okay, great. So what is the theory that made by Detective Markowitz and Kyle Kuzak regarding how the victim was stabbed?
They believe that the victim was facing the perpetrator as he was being stabbed.
And what build would the perpetrator have to be in order to stab this way?
To get the power and angle to stab in the prosecution, how the prosecution depicts, the perpetrator would have to be significantly bigger than the victim.
Yet how do the ring videos show the build of the perpetrator?
The ring videos show that the perpetrator is about the size of the victim.
And what conclusion can you draw from all of this?
I came to the conclusion that the perpetrator stabbed the victim from behind, and this is supported by the fact that if the perpetrator was able to bring the murder weapon into the house with them, then they would be able to surprise the victim, hence being able to stab them in the back. And the perpetrator would have to stab the victim in the back because the victim is about the size of the perpetrator. And so to get that power and that angle, the perpetrator would have to be standing behind the victim.
Now, Professor Van Owen, I'd like to talk a little bit about the ring videos. So what do the ring videos suggest and how the victim was alerted to the perpetrator's presence?
The prosecution investigators believe that the ring notified the victim through his phone.
And what is the problem with this conclusion?
The problem is that these notifications can be turned off, silenced, or simply ignored. And so this would give the perpetrator the opportunity to surprise the victim.
Now let's talk about the cell tower records. How are the cell tower records used in Detective Markowitz's investigation?
Well, Markowitz reaches the conclusion that Avery Becker was near Brackman's house at the time of the murder, solely based on the fact that her phone connected to the cell tower closest to Brackman's residence. But this is another jump to conclusion made by the prosecution.
Why do you say this is a jump to conclusion?
Because a cell tower can cover up to a 6-mile radius in an urban area.
And can a phone connect to a tower that it is not currently next to?
Yes, in fact, a cell phone connects to a tower based on which has the best reception, not which has the closest proximity.
So do we know for sure that Becker's phone was located exactly at Brackman's residence?
No, the cell tower records are not accurate. They are not GPS. According to my investigation, the phone could have been within a 38-mile radius of Brackman's residence and still connected to the tower closest to Brackman's residence.
Now, what did the cell phone tower records show about the location of Avery Becker and Taylor Perkins on the day of the murder?
Well, Taylor Perkins' phone connected to the tower closest to the mall, which Avery Becker and Taylor Perkins both said they were there at the night of the murder, trying to find Avery Becker's phone, which she had lost the night before. This is also supported by the fact that all of the incoming calls and texts from Avery Becker's phone were from Taylor Perkins. And so because of both of these facts, even if Avery Becker's phone was near Brackman's residence, there is a very real possibility that she wasn't even remotely close to her phone the night of the murder.
Your Honor, permission to share my screen.
You may.
Professor Van Owen, I am showing you what has been previously marked as Exhibit 22. Without going into detail, can you briefly tell me what we are looking at?
Yes, this is the audio recording of Jonathan Rollins' court proceeding.
And who is Jonathan Rollins?
Jonathan Rollins was a client of Mr. Brackman's as well as the father of Blair Rollins.
Now, is this a true and accurate representation of the audio recording?
Yes, I used this piece of evidence throughout my investigation and relied on it to form my conclusion.
Your Honor, I move to admit Exhibit 22 into evidence.
Any objection?
Your Honor, objection hearsay.
Court's going to overrule the objection. The expert witness testified that this is information she relied on, so it's admitted for the purposes of that, not necessarily for the truth of the matter asserted.
Thank you, Your Honor. I'm now going to play this exhibit for the members of the jury and the witness.
I'll get you back, Brackman, if it's the last thing I do.
Now, Professor Van Owen, as you've just heard in Exhibit 2, you've just heard Exhibit 22, which is an audio recording from what Jonathan Rollins yelled as he was being escorted back to jail. Can you tell me, in your understanding, what he yelled?
He yelled a very threatening statement directed at Mr. Brackman.
And based on this, I'd now like to talk about the part of your report that mentions another suspect. Who is this suspect?
The suspect is Blair Rollins, a recent graduate of Colorado High School, as well as the daughter of Jonathan Rollins.
And why is Blair Rollins a suspect?
Blair Rollins has a very strong motive to kill Mr. Brackman.
What is this motive?
This motive is helping her father, Jonathan Rollins, get revenge on Mr. Brackman for allowing him to be sentenced to life in prison for committing murder.
And beyond this clear motive, is there any other reason that Blair may be a suspect?
Yes, she matches the general build of shown in the ring camera footage, as well as she was missing from school the day of the murder, and she was connected to Alex Cifuentes, the student who gave possibly doctored screenshots to the police of her and Avery Becker's conversations.
And what happened to Blair Rollins after graduation?
She disappeared with no trace and has probably left the state by now.
Did the police ever investigate Rollins?
Although they investigated her a little bit, they didn't investigate her to the fullest extent as they should and never considered her as a primary suspect.
Now, Professor Van Owen, what is your overall conclusion regarding this investigation?
I believe that this investigation was incredibly rushed. The prosecution investigators formed a conclusion before they even started their investigation, and because of this, they ignored crucial evidence that would have proven their conclusion wrong. They tried to fit the wrong puzzle piece into the puzzle without looking at any other pieces.
No further questions at this time, Your Honor.
Cross-examination, please.
Yes, Your Honor. Let's start. Good evening, Professor Van Owen. Let's start with your work as a private investigator. Your total fees per case range from anywhere from $6,000 to $10,000 per case.
Yes, but people are willing to pay for very quality work.
And you believe that prosecutors can't see beyond their own noses?
Yes, I do believe that.
And so in this case, you've reviewed the police reports,
Yes, I have.
the crime scene reconstruction conducted by Kyle Kuzak,
Yes, I have also reviewed that.
the cell tower reports prepared by Detective Markowitz.
Yes, I have also reviewed that as well.
And you only conducted a partial investigation?
Yes, but this is because I had those other pieces of evidence available to me.
But you believe that the police's investigation was rushed?
Yes, I do. Incredibly rushed.
And you don't believe that Kyle Kuzak's report is 100% accurate?
No, I do not.
And you have a variety of different problems with Markowitz's cell tower reports?
Yes, I do.
And you believe that the police had the necessary tools at their fingertips and simply chose not to use them?
Yes, that is what happened.
But you relied on the evidence from these reports to make your conclusions?
Again, I only looked at those parts that I believed were true, and that's why I did a partial investigation on parts of the case that I believe were untrue. And so I did use parts of those, but not the entire picture.
And you believe that Kuzak and Markowitz influenced each other's opinions?
Yes, I do.
But do you have any evidence to support that claim?
No, I do not, but I still believe that they were working very closely together.
Let's go to your theory of the case. You stated that the only evidence of a struggle were the scuff marks on the floor?
Yes, that is true.
So there was no broken plate at the scene?
Yes, there was a broken plate, but that could have been from a previous time at the house.
Let's talk about Blair Rollins now. So you don't believe that Avery Becker had enough motive to kill Mr. Brackman?
No, I do not.
And you believe that Blair Rollins had more motive to kill Mr. Brackman?
Yes, she had a lot more motive. Mr. Brackman allowed her father to go to prison for life. I would say that's a very strong motive.
However, you've never had the chance to actually speak with Blair Rollins in this?
Again, no one could, since she has not been able to be located.
In fact, you've never actually met Blair Rollins?
Again, I came onto this case after it happened and after the fact that Blair Rollins left and has not been able to be located, so I have not had the ability to talk to her.
So, do you have any physical evidence indicating Blair Rollins had anything to do with Mr. Brackman's murder?
Yes, she matches the general build as shown in the ring camera footage.
No further questions, Your Honor.
Any redirect?
Yes, Your Honor. Professor Van Owen, can you explain to everyone one more time why you believe Blair Rollins to be a suspect?
Yes, she has a very strong motive to kill Mr. Brackman, and that motive is to get revenge at Mr. Brackman for allowing her father to go to prison for life after being sentenced for murder.
No further questions, Your Honor.
Thank you. May this witness be excused. Ms. Van Owen, thank you for your testimony. Defense can call their next witness, please.
The defense calls Avery Becker to the stand.
Ms. Becker, you are under oath.
What is your first and last name?
My name is Avery Becker. Becker is spelled Becker.
And where do you go to school?
I recently graduated from Colorado High School, or CHS.
And what's your relationship in today's trial?
I'm being wrongfully accused of the murder of my old mock trial coach, Mr. Brackman.
How did you know Mr. Brackman?
Like I said, he used to be my mock trial coach when I was in high school.
And how long were you on his team?
I was on his team all 4 years of high school.
Could you tell us a little bit more about your experience in mock trial?
Yeah, Mock trial always came super naturally to me and was always really easy for me. It's just kind of like second nature. So I didn't feel that I had to put in as much work as other people did because it came so naturally to me. Mr. Brackman, however, did not think the same.
What were some of your accomplishments in mock trial?
I actually won the Best Attorney award 1 year at regionals.
And did Mr. Brackman give you credit for your success?
No, he did not.
Speaking of Mr. Brackman, what was your relationship with him like?
It was definitely pretty rocky. We fought a lot. We didn't agree with each other's work styles, so that created a lot of arguments.
And why did you feel like he didn't like your style of work?
Well, he had told me on occasion that he thought I was lazy, and he would always yell at me for being unprepared.
Did you think that you needed to put in as much effort as everyone else?
No, like I said, mock trial came naturally to me. It was like second nature.
And did you ever have any big disputes over your work ethic?
Yes, one time we got into a very big dispute because he thought that I didn't deserve the Best Attorney award that I mentioned earlier.
And what did he do in result?
In result of this argument, he actually kicked me off the team for good.
Did he kick you off the team for good before demoting you from the team?
Yes, sorry, I forgot to mention that. We also have previously gotten into an argument about me being late and my preparedness, in which he moved me from our A team to our B team.
And did you try and get back on the A team?
Yes, I did. My best friend Taylor, actually, she didn't like mock trial as much as I did, and she knew how much it meant to me. So she ended up quitting the A team so that I could get back on the A team.
And after getting let back on the team, how did you perform at regionals?
I did really good. That was when I won the Best Attorney award.
And was Mr. Brackman proud of your success at regionals?
No.
And how did that make you feel?
It made me really upset. I mean, I know that I'm shown as kind of a slacker, and I was kind of a slacker. I didn't work as hard as other people may have, but I still really cared about mock trial, and I put what I thought was my best work forward.
So what did you do next?
What is that in reference to?
After he wasn't proud of your success at regionals.
Well, we got into a really big argument about it, and I'm not really proud of what I did next, but I actually took what I thought was a dry erase marker, and I wrote on his car, Worst Attorney Award.
Did you know that the marker wasn't a dry erase marker?
No, if I had known it wasn't a dry erase marker, I would have never done it. I was just trying to like prank him and kind of get back at him, but not deface his property.
And did you get in any trouble for it?
Yeah, like I said, I ended up getting kicked off the team for good because of it.
And how did you feel after getting kicked off the team?
I was really upset. Mock was my life, so it was really hard for me.
And did you talk to anyone about how that made you feel?
Yeah, the night that I got kicked off, I talked to my mom because I was really upset, and she actually calmed me down and just told me that I should apologize in the morning. So the next morning, I went to Mr. Brackman's office and tried to apologize, but he wouldn't talk to me. So I ended up just texting him and saying, I'm sorry, but he never responded.
And then where were you the day that he was killed?
I was at the mall, more specifically the Fry Shack.
Were you with anyone?
Yes, I was with my best friend, Taylor Perkins.
And why were you guys there?
Well, you see, I had lost my phone the night before, and the last place I remember having it was at the mall and the Fry Shack.
Did you ever end up finding it?
No, I still have not found it.
Do you have
I believe it was stolen.
Why do you think it was stolen?
Well, Alex Cifuentes claims that I sent them texts asking for help to get back on the team, but I would never do that. I don't like Alex, and we are not friends at all.
So were you with Alex friends?
Like I said, no.
And were you upset to hear about Mr. Brackman's death?
Of course, I mean, we had our differences and we argued, but death is a very serious thing that I wouldn't wish on anyone.
And finally, did you kill Mr. Brackman?
No, like I said, while we had our arguments and our differences, I would still never wish death on anyone.
No further questions.
Thank you. Cross-exam.
Yes, Your Honor. Avery Becker, you went to Colorado High School?
Yeah.
And you were on their mock trial team.
Yeah, I was.
You and the coach, Mr. Brackman, had a very rocky relationship, correct?
Yeah, we fought a lot.
And this was initially because he thought you should work harder?
Yes, like I have previously stated, he had told me that he thought I was lazy.
And this news made you very mad, did it not?
Yeah, I think it hurts for anyone to have their work ethic be insulted.
And before the regional tournament, Mr. Brackman demoted you to the B team, correct?
Yes, he did.
And this also angered you?
Yeah, I think anyone would have been upset. It's really hard to be brought down to a team that wasn't as great as your old one.
Thank you. But Taylor Perkins left the team and you were brought back onto the A team, correct?
Yeah, that was really nice of her.
And after the regional tournament, Mr. Brackman confronted you about how you should have followed the script you two spent 2 hours making together, right?
Yes, he did.
And this news made you incredibly angry and you stormed out of practice.
Yes, it resulted in an argument that made me very upset and angry.
And in response to this, you wrote Worst Attorney Award on his car in permanent marker.
Yes, I'm really ashamed of that, but I did think that it was a dry erase marker.
And Mr. Brackman cut you from the mock trial team completely after that, correct?
Yeah.
Once again, you became enraged with Mr. Brackman, did you not?
I think anyone would be pretty upset. I mean, if you were doing something that was everything to you and you couldn't do it anymore, I think you would be pretty upset. Like if you couldn't practice law anymore, I think you would be pretty upset.
But in total, you would say Mr. Brackman infuriated you quite frequently, did he not?
Yeah, I would say that. We got into a lot of fights.
Thank you. No further questions.
Redirect.
No redirect, Your Honor.
All right. Ms. Becker, you may be excused. Is defense rest?
Yes, Your Honor, the defense rests.
Thank you. Closing arguments. Plaintiff. People. Prosecutor.
Your Honor, could I please reserve 1 minute of my time for rebuttal?
Just ask the timekeeper to alert and to let them know that 1 minute can be reserved.
Oh, would you like me to ask that?
No, I just asked. You have the 1 minute reserved. I just asked the timekeeper to let you know.
All right. Forced off the team, forced in the house. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, thank you for your service as jurors today. As the prosecution stated in opening statements earlier today, Avery Becker is guilty of the burglary and felony murder of Mackenzie Brackman. We have seen videos of her at the house at the time of the murder, and we have seen the photos, text messages, and cell phone evidence that proves she is guilty. It really is that simple. Avery was mad with Mr. Brackman all the time, and they had a very terrible relationship. We know that Avery was enraged after Mr. Brackman told her to work harder, and we know that Mr. Brackman demoted her to the B team, which infuriated Avery enough to vandalize Mr. Brackman's car. We also know that she was cut from the team completely, which pushed Avery over the edge with anger. And we know that Avery even made her revenge plans clear through text sent to Alex Fuentes. Forced off the team, forced in the house. Avery has been charged on 2 counts: burglary and felony murder. The burglary charge is simple. Avery Becker knowingly, unlawfully entered Coach Brackman's home with the intent to commit a crime. We know from the text messages that that crime was more vandalism, which under the law is called criminal mischief. The second charge is felony murder. Miss Becker committed this burglary and it resulted in Coach Brackman's death. Whether Avery intentionally killed Mr. Brackman or if killing the coach was an accident that happened during the burglary, it doesn't matter. Under the law, felony murder just means that the coach died in the course of the burglary. Ms. Becker's only defense in this case is her unbelievable claim that the person we saw in the videos approaching the coach's home to break in was not Ms. Becker, but someone else. This unreasonable assertion is simply not true because the location of Avery's phone was at Mr. Brackman's house at the time of the murder, and no one can testify with reasonable alibis that she was elsewhere. And the defense says that Avery lost her phone, but this is not reasonable because she stated herself that her phone was like her third kidney, but only realized it was gone the next day. Taylor Perkins, who testified for the defense, has made her loyalties quite clear even before the death of Mr. Brackman. Alex Cifuentes testified and explained how Taylor Perkins was quite easily convinced to drop off the A-team, forcing Mr. Brackman to bring Avery back onto the team after being demoted. Clearly, Taylor would do anything for Avery, and quite possibly is lying to protect her best friend. Blake Van Owen, a private investigator for the defense, is guilty of a criminal injustice of her own. She injured a young woman of color during an arrest, not to mention the fact that she still hasn't cleared herself for her conduct that evening. Professor Van Owen could be simply trying to look like the good guy in this situation in hopes to clear her name. Ladies and gentlemen, there has been no evidence presented in this case that raises a reasonable doubt that Avery Becker is guilty of both burglary and felony murder. Any doubts the defense is trying to create in this case are unreasonable. It is unreasonable for the defendant to expect you to believe that Avery Becker lost her phone, and it is unreasonable for the defendant to expect you to believe that anyone other than Avery Becker committed these crimes. Thank you again for your dedication and careful consideration in this case. We ask that after carefully considering all of the evidence, you reach the only reasonable verdict in this case, that Avery Becker is guilty of both burglary and felony murder. For these reasons, I ask that you return verdicts of guilty. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Burns. Defense closing.
Good evening, Your Honor, and ladies and gentlemen of the jury. Who is the culprit here? It most certainly must not be a once high school student who was upset with her mock trial coach. Avery was one suspect, but due to the poor investigation on behalf of the prosecution, no other suspects were brought to light. In today's trial, not once did the prosecution mention the name of Blair Rollins, a girl with an ability, no alibi, and most importantly, a motive. A poor investigation was done, and now a murder runs free. Today, ladies and gentlemen of the jury, if you had any doubts of Avery, once high school girl, being the murderer in today's trial, then you cannot wrongfully convict her. Reasonable doubt ensures that if you had any doubts, even one, it would be wrong to accuse an innocent girl of a murder like this one. Today, from the prosecution, we first hear from Alex Cifuentes and Detective Markowitz, which after listening to their answers and statements, you are probably sitting in confusion. How could, in this case, we have only heard from one student and that student had all the information we needed? Why weren't more students that were connected to Mr. Brackman put into question? As we still don't know this answer, we do know that a huge puzzle piece is missing from their testimonies, as we still don't even know if the true evidence that puts Miss Becker into question is even real. The screenshots that were exchanged from Alex Cifuentes to Avery Becker haven't even been seen by a detective or anyone else working on this case besides Alex Cifuentes himself. Today, we hear from the defense many witnesses who proved Miss Becker's innocence. We first hear from Taylor Perkins, who is Avery Becker's best friend on the mock trial team, who was with Avery during the day of Mr. Brackman's killing. Taylor described how they spent all day on the hunt for Avery Becker's phone. As a close friend of Avery's, Taylor recounted how Avery and Mr. Brackman had their differences, but Avery would have never resorted to violence, as Avery already had felt terrible about the Sharpie incident on Mr. Brackman's car. Then we hear from Professor Blake Van Owens, an expert police and forensic evidence, crime scene reconstruction, cell tower analysis, and a general police investigation tactics, who analyzed the investigation done by the prosecution team and showed how poorly it had really been done. The investigation left many holes in this case due to lack of care and due to the fact it was extremely rushed, which leaves room to miss important things. These holes left Avery a prime suspect, but had they paid closer attention, Avery wouldn't have even been on the radar. Finally, you hear from Avery Becker herself, and as she described her relationship with Mr. Brackman, we can realize that their relationship wasn't all rainbows and butterflies. One issue was the brighting on Mr. Brackman's car, which resulted in Avery Becker being kicked off the mock trial team. While Avery admits that she thought it was a dry erase marker she was writing with, she still tried and failed to apologize to Mr. Brackman in person because he had already been killed. While they didn't get along great at times, she testified that she would never resort to violence against him. And when Avery was asked today if she was responsible for Mr. Brackman's death, she replied under oath that she would never even think to do such a thing. After reviewing everyone's statements and questions, it is easy to conclude that after today, the prosecution has tried to pin a murder on a once high school girl. With everything we have heard today, it is clear that the prosecution is stretching to get facts to close this case as fast as they can, and in doing so, they wrongly accuse Avery Becker guilty. The evidence shown today was like a puzzle the prosecution rushed to try and complete, but in doing so, they put all the pieces in the wrong place. They missed steps, and like I said, now a murderer runs free. Today, the prosecution had the burden of proof, the burden which they failed to meet. They had to prove beyond any reasonable doubt whatsoever that Avery Becker was the only possible guilty suspect. They failed to meet this burden, further proving Avery Becker's innocence. With the requirements of reasonable doubt in place, members of the jury, we ask you today to follow the truth and find Avery Becker innocent.
Thank you. If I could get a time check of how much time's left for rebuttal close.
The prosecution has 1 minute and 10 seconds, and the defense has 49 seconds.
Thank you. Ms. Burns, you have 1 minute, 10 seconds.
Thank you, Your Honor. You can't fit the wrong puzzle piece into the puzzle no matter how hard you try. The defense is trying to taint your perception of Blair Rollins and pin the burglary and felony murder on her. Blair, ladies and gentlemen, is the wrong puzzle piece. It is unreasonable for the defendant to expect you to believe Avery Becker lost her phone. It is unreasonable for the defendant to expect you to believe Blair Rollins is the suspect. And it is unreasonable for the defendant to expect you to believe anyone other than Avery Becker committed those crimes. Ladies and gentlemen, we have identified and presented evidence to prove that, in fact, Avery Becker is the right puzzle piece. Sometimes when you look a little closer at the piece, you realize it's been the right one all along. For these reasons, I ask that you return verdicts of guilty. Thank you.
Thank you. And that concludes the second round. Congratulations. You made it through a long afternoon and evening. At this time, I'm going to ask that the scoring panelists turn on their cameras as well as all of the participants. I recognize that the hour is late, and I want to make sure the scoring panelists can get their scores in. And while they're doing that, I'm just going to give some brief remarks on my behalf. So I have been judging or participating in high school mock trials for about 15 years. And I'm a magistrate here in Boulder District Courts. And I want to commend you all on your performance tonight. It is clear that you have all spent considerable time learning your materials and preparing for this evening. And I wish you all the best going forward in the competition. As far as feedback goes, I'm just going to try to really give you very minimal feedback. I think both sides can improve on making objections and responding to objections. So there are particular exhibits that are ripe for objections, and such as the text messages, right? And there's plenty of other opportunities that came up during the course of testimony where objections could be made. If you're making an objection, make it very succinct. Objection, hearsay, objection, relevance, objection, whatever your basis is. The other thing is you need to practice responding to the objections. Your Honor, this is not hearsay because. Your Honor, this is relevant because. Your Honor, this is not speculative because. And again, key exhibits such as your text screenshots, There's lots of different ways to get that exhibit admitted. There's a lot of objections you can make to keep it out. You probably should really kind of practice and rehearse those because you're likely to see different scenarios throughout the course of your competition. I thought I had one other point to make. But I'm blanking on it now. So that's going to conclude my remarks. Great work tonight. Get some rest. I know you guys got an early morning tomorrow. I'm going to invite any of the other three panelists to go ahead and speak if they want. Oh, Brett, I can't hear you. Yeah, still can't hear you. So let's see if we can get, I don't know if, Mr. Forsythe, if you want to.
Yeah, I'm happy to jump in while I hope Brett works out her microphone. Maybe I'll just introduce myself quickly. Everyone, I'm Matt Forsty. I'm a third-year law student at CU Law. It was a pleasure to be with you tonight, and congratulations on a really excellent job. This is actually, while I've participated in mock trial a number of times in my life, this is my first time judging a high school competition. So I was frankly astonished and impressed with everything you were able to do and the smoothness of doing it over Zoom. So pat yourself on the back and good luck going forward. Just in terms of feedback, I'll just highlight a few things. Like both teams seemed incredibly well prepared. I loved how the themes were so clearly set up and clearly woven through not just your opens and closes, but all of the witness testimony, both your directs and crosses. I heard echoing of the themes and even some explicit reference to the themes. So that just showed excellent preparation. I'll also just say like excellent courtroom conduct, professionalism, and all of that. It's they're habits that you learn over time, and it's clear that you've practiced them. So that was excellent. I'll echo what Magistrate Collins said about objections. It's one of the hardest things to do, you have to know evidence in order to do it, and so that's hard and it takes time. Maybe my tip for you in the near term would be, especially for your directs and crosses, prioritize them in terms of thinking about your objections and preparing potential responses. Think about what are my 3, 4, or 5 most important facts or exhibits in this direct examination or in this cross-examination, and what would I say if the other side responded or if the other side objected to it? Or conversely, what are the 5 most important things this adverse witness might say that I want to get out, and what are my grounds for objecting to that? So that would just be my recommendation for what you might be able to do in the near term there. But with that, I'll just say excellent job and good luck going forward.
All right, can anyone hear me? Great. I'm Brett Landis. I'm the managing attorney of our Boulder County Legal Services office. And this is my 3rd or 4th time judging mock trial, and I just really enjoy it. I did not have a mock trial team at my high school, so I really enjoy watching all of you. And it is very clear, as everyone said, how much effort and how much work you have all put into this. I'm going to echo Magistrate Collins a little bit and just point out that the biggest room for growth really is those objections, both making them and responding to them. I noticed particularly one team did not make many objections at all. And I just want to say that it's not something to be afraid of. It's something that comes up day in, day out when you're in hearings. One tip someone gave me once, just as a way to practice, is watch any sort of legal drama on television and just make the objections, because they make a lot of evidentiary mistakes in television, and it's a good way to practice it, just get in that habit of not being shy about speaking up with your objections. One thing about responding to objections, that one participant in particular, and I'm not going to name you, but it got a little huffy when someone was responding to objections. And just to remember, you know, that is the judge giving you an opportunity to explain yourself. So it's nothing to get upset over or feel like it's a burden in any way. Just really, it's your chance to further prove your case. You know, I do want to single out Mr. Chen for really excellent cross-examination. I wish some of mine went that smoothly. You had really good control of your witness and really well-formulated questions. And I think you walked that line of being assertive but not aggressive really, really deftly. And I think that was really wonderfully done. Similarly, both openings and both closings were really, really well done. I think you all had really, really clear themes, particularly defense's opening. I think you wove that in with the evidence really well. And then prosecution's closing, I think you did such a smart thing in your rebuttal and made such a good use of that when you took their theme and used it. So really well done. I mean, I think both teams had such a great job, and to the witnesses, you all played really fun parts. I think the person who played Taylor Perkins, I think, had the most fun out of everyone. What a fun character. So thank you so much.
Well, I won't belabor the points, but I want to say everybody was just so poised and very well. You spoke very well for yourselves. The witnesses, I will agree, were fun. Witnesses, of course, more like actors because they don't really have a say in the legal theories or the objections and the evidence. But I will also echo that both the openings and the closings were excellent. Those were you really made the points that were brought out during the trial, and you did it very, very well. And like everybody else, I wish you very well in the future because you have great careers ahead of you, whatever you choose to do. And anybody that wants to go in the law, you've got a great background for it. And again, look at the evidence, look at the objections, be prepared for them, and be prepared for how you're going to respond to them. And you will really do very well in your careers. Good luck to you.
Thank you, Ms. Meadow. Just one more quick point about the objections. Obviously, mock trial is a lot about performance, right? That's a lot of your grade. And so don't get hung up on whether you win the objection or the judge overrules your objection. One, nobody's keeping score. And two, it really doesn't matter. You know, if a judge, goes against you on an objection, don't continue to try and do the same thing over and over again. So that's not a good thing, but don't stop objecting or, giving it a shot, okay? Because it's really part of that performance that you're going to be graded on. So again, well done. Have fun. This is a great experience. It's obviously different remotely, but you guys were all very professional in there, and I wish you good luck going forward. Feel free to take off.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.